Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back to my channel, Anastasia, Cosmic Astrologer with you guys. Just wanting to share something really interesting. I did a reading for a client. It was quite some time ago now, and I've been meaning to show this chart. I have permission from the individual. I'm not disclosing the name, just the birth data. And this is all about the fifth harmonic chart and just how powerful the fifth harmonic chart is. I've actually done a really great video on Prince, the singer Prince. I'll pop a link in the description below. If you haven't seen that video, it's worth watching, particularly if you're a fan, and even if you're not, it's a good way to learn astrology because I talk about Prince's chart and his fifth harmonic chart as well. But I wanted to bring this particular example to you guys. First of all, just a recap on sorry, a bit noisy. Just a recap on harmonics. Harmonics are basically charts that show us specific patterns or aspects, okay, that are there in the chart, but we, whilst we do see them, when we draw up, for example, let me put it to you like this. So the fifth harmonic chart, okay, is going to show us an aspect called a quintile aspect, which is 72 degrees, okay? And the quintile aspect, which derives out of the number 5, purely creates to creativity, one's creative ability and expression in whichever form that will take. And form is a really important word because the fifth harmonic chart and creativity has a particular form to it, or rather the individual gives their creativity or creates their creativity through the form that they create it through, right? So whether it's music, dance, writing, art, it can be any. I mean, it's outside of the standard sort of frame of what we normally associate creativity with, because the example that I'm about to show you guys now has actually got to do with this particular individual's creative ability from the point of view of having psychic or clairvoyant abilities. And so the fifth harmonic chart shows where and how we are going to express our creativity. How is that going to take form and basically come to life? Now, even if you are very well versed in astrology, or even if you're not, it's very easy to miss the quintile aspect. It's 72 degrees, and you have to be really have a pretty good eye for detail, pretty good with maths, and pretty sharp on that level to just notice a quintile aspect without looking at an aspect grid or anything like that, right? Or having a computer software program show you or tell you. And given that computer programs do show us, obviously we don't have to know how to calculate, but it is a great learning experience to learn how to calculate all the aspects just visually with your mind and your eyes. Anyway, okay, so this particular individual, I'm not going to go into the person's personal history because then I'm just sort of opening up information that is confidential. So without exploring the entire chart and without going into the life story of this individual, what I will say, which will still reflect and show you what I'm trying to show you through this presentation, this individual has come to me at a time where they are wanting to pursue creating a life path / career out of being working as a clairvoyant or a psychic. And the individual asked me my personal opinion from an astrological level, from a professional opinion. Do I see her chart reflecting those skills or those abilities or those talents at all. And this is the person's chart. Now, when you look at their chart, there's not a great deal that immediately stands out for a person who potentially could be or could have the skills or abilities to be a clairvoyant. The main thing that perhaps most of you might be thinking as well at this stage is the incredibly busy 12th house. However, what we need to understand is, well, a couple of things. The first thing is that obviously all the archetypes, the position of the planets, the aspects between them, and the houses that everything is in, plays out on so many different levels. We can't, well, we shouldn't, I don't think, just make a definitive sort of statement about, for example, Mars in the 11th. We can draw some characteristics out of what Mars in Gemini in the 11th might mean, but that's still going to have multiple layers for every individual. So it's that the chart itself is multi-dimensional, and a fifth harmonic chart is showing us one of those dimensions. Every harmonic chart that you look at, and there's loads of them, the most popular are 1 to 9, or the oldest, the ones that have been around for a very long time, used in Vedic astrology and things like that as well. They call them the dashas there, so it's a bit of a different way of looking at it, but it's essentially the same thing. So the birth chart is multi-dimensional, and what you see on the screen right now is just one view, one perspective. But when you start breaking down every layer, you could study a chart for lifetimes and still not have uncovered every single layer. That's how much richness and vastness there is in an actual birth chart. Which is why I've been looking at my own chart for 25 years and I'm still learning new things about it. You know, it's such a rich, sacred teaching and wisdom that has so many dimensions, and the thing that keeps me so inspired is the journey of discovery that is infinite. So going back to this individual's chart, planets in the 12th house don't necessarily mean that a person is going to have clairvoyant abilities. The 12th house, first of all, is it's so deep, so unconscious, so vast, so rich. It has so many hidden components to it, largely unconscious. And we have the levels that perhaps can be identified from an external level, if you like. Well, the 12th house correlates to chronic illness, for instance. It correlates to hospitals, prisons, correlates to retreating, withdrawing from the entire world, you know, and that's what do hospitals do? What do prisons do? You withdraw, you retreat, more or less, but it's out of your control. And the 12th house is largely, if not all, out of our control. So it's very complex to unpack a 12th house for any person, but you can. It just takes a lot of skill, a lot of insight, a lot of understanding, and also knowing the individual. You know, if you're reading what I call a blind chart, so you looking at this chart, for instance, now you don't know who this person is, you don't know anything about them, you're going to apply your astrological understanding to the degree of your own understanding. And yes, you might hit on certain things that might ring true for the individual and so forth. But I can assure you that if you really want to understand a person's chart, you need to understand a little bit about their life. You need to have some insight into their life, because this birth chart could belong to another 5,000 people. Are all those people going to be living the exact identical life? Of course they're not. So it is really important to engage with your client or with the person you are wanting to read their chart and so forth. Okay, so the 12th house, as I was saying, is extremely complex, has so many dimensions to it, as the whole chart does itself. But the archetype Leo, which is most of the energy contained in the 12th house and a Leo ascendant. Leo is not a sign that correlates to the ability of being psychic or clairvoyant. It's just not about that. Okay, um, so and Venus in Cancer isn't necessarily about that either. So the whilst those planetary bodies are indicating that this individual's life path is very 12th house, so much about their life is extremely 12th house, it doesn't mean that this person is going to naturally be clairvoyant. So when I was looking at this person's chart, I thought, okay, well, let me just start looking a little deeper and start working this out. Now, where I discovered, in fact, that this person actually does have clairvoyant ability, um, is in her fifth harmonic chart, and I will show you that chart in a moment. But before I do, I just want to add that this individual has had multiple readings by astrologers and other psychics, clairvoyants, and she's pretty much asked them all the same question. And it is my understanding from what I've been told that she was told by all people that no, she doesn't have the ability and that she should not pursue it because it won't work for her. It'll be a waste of time, something to that effect. And I think that whilst this individual knows her own abilities, because for the most part, most of us do know our own abilities. However, receiving that feedback from people certainly act as a force of discouragement, right? So finally, this person comes to me for a reading and asks me the question, do you see this in my chart, etc. So as I said, I started doing a little bit of digging, and so this is the natal chart. Okay, before I go ahead with the fifth harmonic, let me just also bring to your attention that the signatures that correlate to the ability of clairvoyance or psychic abilities. Here are the archetypes and planets that correlate to those skills and those abilities, whether you've brought them in from the past, usually that is the case anyway, but for those that don't believe in past lives, maybe it's a skill, a talent, whatever you want to call it, that you have developed this lifetime. Whatever the case, past, present, future, whatever, it doesn't matter, because at the highest level of things, there is no past, present, or future. Everything's happening all at the same time. That's a whole other conversation. Okay, so Neptune, okay, is something that needs to stand out in the chart. Pisces and the 12th house, okay? Those three signatures need to be strong in the chart. Now, in this case, what this person has is absolutely a strong 12th house. However, it doesn't necessarily mean immediately that we're going to make the assumption that this person is psychic. I think perhaps the furthest you could go without knowing anything about the person is to suggest that they are an incredibly sensitive individual, and certainly have the ability to tune into energy, frequency, vibration, from a collective sort of level and perspective as well. It's typical of people who have 12th house planets um, to feel the pain and suffering of the entire world at times. It's a pretty difficult thing to have, especially personal planets, when you're talking about Venus, not so much, but certainly the Sun and Mercury would have quite a difficult time in the 12th house, especially the Sun being the body that connects to, at least from an exoteric level, correlates to personality, ego, identity, being able to express yourself. And the 12th house is where we surrender our ego. So, okay, so Neptune, Pisces, 12th house, Uranus, Pluto, Scorpio, 8th house, the moon, and 9th house. So, those are the signatures that are typically quite strong in a person's chart when they have, clairvoyant psychic abilities. And I'll just say them one more time. Neptune, Pisces, 12th house, Uranus, Pluto, Scorpio, 8th house, the moon, and the 9th house. So when you look at this individual's chart, as I've already said a couple of times, yes, the 12th house figures very strongly, but the bodies in the 12th house don't necessarily figure. The 9th house doesn't necessarily figure from what we're trying to understand here, because Ceres certainly doesn't correlate with that. Vesta in Taurus doesn't really correlate with that either. Vesta is actually conjunct the midheaven, so that has something to do with her own personal devotion and focus relative to Taurus and the MC. I don't want to go into that, but I'm just pointing out that Vesta really is in the 10th house. So the 9th house doesn't figure strongly. The 8th house doesn't figure strongly. The moon doesn't necessarily figure strongly, unless, of course, you are really good at maths and you've already figured out the aspect between the moon and Neptune. So the chart overall is not a chart that stands out for those sorts of skills and abilities. It can point to other skills and abilities, but not necessarily the psychic clairvoyant. So now I want to show you the fifth harmonic chart. And here it is here. So immediately, the most obvious thing is the Moon-Neptune conjunction. This is this individual's psychic clairvoyant ability. There it is, Moon-Neptune. A Moon-Neptune conjunction, I've seen it many times over for people who have those sorts of abilities and skills. So there it is, and it's actually conjunct the MC, okay, because in the fifth harmonic chart, or in harmonic charts, the 10th house is the 10th house, but the MC could be in a completely different house, okay? And here the MC is actually in the 8th house, which is very interesting because, as I said before, the 8th house is a signature for those sorts of abilities. And here this individual has, well, Vesta, MC, Neptune and Moon, all conjunct. So not only does this person have clairvoyant ability, but this person can actually make a living from it as well. Vesta is there conjunct the midheaven. Now, in this fifth harmonic chart, and this is the other interesting component, in her natal chart, if you remember, I'll just go back to it, Vesta's in Taurus, conjunct the midheaven. That's a very powerful Vesta. It's got to do with money. And in the fifth harmonic chart, Vesta appears again, right there with the midheaven in the sign of Libra, though, but she's still there. So her presence is very strong in the fifth harmonic chart as well. But the main thing here is the Moon-Neptune conjunction, which happens to be in the 8th house. So there's three signatures: Moon, Neptune, Scorpio, 8th house. Well, it's four actually signatures, because Scorpio is part of the 8th house. Even though Libra is on the 8th house cusp, Scorpio is also contained in the 8th house. So there's four signatures here that all point to those abilities. The Sun-Pluto conjunction is a very important conjunction in this fifth harmonic chart as well. And that would just add other layers to this individual's ability to bring forth their creative juice, creative power, and they can regenerate themselves and transform as well, just through getting in touch with their creativity. So creativity doesn't necessarily, from the level of the fifth harmonic chart, just need to speak to the traditional artist or musician. Creativity has many faces, so we have to kind of be flexible and open with our mind in terms of understanding the creative. I mean, creative force is creative force. Whatever that creates, it creates. It's a creative force, period. And it's also about understanding the symbolism, in the fifth harmonic chart. The moon and Neptune, that symbolism is all about clairvoyant abilities, plain and simple. It's not complex. You don't have to dig too deep. It's all there. So this is just an example I wanted to bring to you guys, because if you might be in this situation, or you might know somebody else who's in this situation, or you may not have considered the fifth harmonic chart as being something important. Well, it actually is, because it can show you things that you would otherwise not see in the natal chart, which can really inspire and give direction to a person when it comes to their own creative abilities, and perhaps what they are seeking to, actualize on that level and create relative to their life path. And this was indeed a very important and powerful reading for this individual, because, as I said, this individual was given extensive feedback from numerous sources, all of which said, no, you don't have the ability, don't waste your time, it's not going to work, more or less. But what these individuals fail to see, from what I can gather at least, I don't know, I haven't spoken to them, I don't know their thinking or reasoning behind it. I'm assuming it's just based on looking at the actual natal chart. However, if you don't have an extensive toolkit in your astrological knowledge, you will miss out on things. And that's the whole point of studying, astrology ongoing, because it's infinite, and you never stop learning. But look, harmonics is not something that's extremely obscure and something that's esoteric or anything like that necessarily, although it kind of does have a bit of an esoteric edge to it, if you like, because the reason I say that is because harmonics, which are based on vibration, it's vibrations. Okay, a harmonic is basically a vibration between two planetary bodies, for example, or it could be three, it could be four, however many it is. It's the vibration that is exchanged between any two bodies, and the vibration that's exchanged is based on a number system. It's based on divisions, and each number has its very specific meaning. Each number correlates to the things that you look at in the chart, which you define as aspects. So a conjunction in a birth chart would be what number? It would be number one. It's one. It's two bodies together, side by side. Number one. Number two would be an opposition, two planets opposite each other. Okay, so number two would be the second harmonic. Number one is the first harmonic, and so on and so forth. So there's multi-layers, multi-dimensions, and it's really about learning and exploring. So there you have it, guys. Hope that was useful and interesting for you, and just some food for thought, and just encouraging you guys to check out your fifth harmonic chart as well. And I'll pop the link below regarding Princess chart, and you can check that out if you're interested in learning more about this particular component of astrology. Okay, I hope you're all doing well, and sending you all much love and blessings, and see you soon. Thanks, bye.